We all want to be sure of something. In a world filled with conflicting opinions and constant noise, certainty is the ultimate currency. We spend our lives building foundations of knowledge, hoping that if we study hard enough or climb high enough, we will finally reach a place where we can say we truly understand how the world works. But what happens when you reach the very top of your field and realize that the ladder you have been climbing is leaning against the wrong wall? This is the story of a man who had everything the intellectual world could offer and decided to walk away from it all because he realized he was living a lie. His name was Al-Ghazali, and his journey through the 11th century mirrors the same anxieties we feel today about truth, reputation, and the limits of the human mind. Al-Ghazali was born in 1058 in the city of Tus, located in what is now northeastern Persia. At that time, the Islamic world was the center of global thought, but it was also a place of deep division. It was an era of intellectual development wars, not unlike the technical battles we see in modern industries. Philosophy, theology, and law were all competing for authority, and scholars were the celebrities of their day. His beginnings were humble. His father was a poor wool spinner who wanted nothing more than for his sons to have the education he never had. When his father passed away, Al-Ghazali was left in the care of a mystic, a move that planted the early seeds of a spiritual perspective that would later define his life. But as a young man, Al-Ghazali was driven by a different engine, the pursuit of mastery. He was a brilliant student. He moved through the ranks of Islamic law and logic with a speed that left his peers behind. By his early 30s, he had reached the absolute pinnacle of his profession. He was appointed to lead the Nizamiya Madrasa in Baghdad, which was essentially the most prestigious academic post in the entire world at the time. He was the advisor to powerful leaders and the teacher to hundreds of students. On paper, he was the most successful man in his field. But as his reputation grew, so did a quiet, nagging doubt. Al-Ghazali began to look at his own work and his own motivations with a level of scrutiny that most people would find terrifying. He started to ask himself if he was teaching the truth because he believed it, or if he was teaching it because it maintained his status. He realized that much of what he called knowledge was actually just inherited belief or habit. He was a master of argument, but he wasn't sure if he was a master of the truth. This was not just a small midlife crisis, it was a total system failure. By 1095, the pressure of this internal conflict became physical. Al-Ghazali later wrote that he reached a point where he literally could not speak. He would go to the lecture hall to address his students, and his tongue would not move. He could not swallow food. His body was shutting down because his mind could no longer support the weight of his own insincerity. The physicians of Baghdad were baffled. They looked for physical causes, but they found none. They eventually concluded that the problem was in the heart. Al-Ghazali realized that his reason, the very tool he had used to build his career, had turned against him. He had used logic to deconstruct everything until there was nothing left to hold on to. He could no longer trust his senses, and he could no longer trust his rational proofs. In a move that shocked the entire Islamic world, Al-Ghazali walked away. He gave up his position, his wealth, and his fame. He told people he was going on a pilgrimage to Mecca, but in reality, he was fleeing the person he had become. He spent the next 11 years as a wanderer. He lived in Damascus, Jerusalem, and Medina. He spent his days in the minarets of mosques, cleaning floors and living in total seclusion. During this decade of silence, he turned towards Sufism. He wasn't looking for complex new theories. He was looking for a way to experience the truth directly. He realized that certainty does not come from winning a debate or writing a perfect logical proof. It comes from a transformation of the self. He traded the complexity of the classroom for the discipline of silence and prayer. When he finally returned to the world, he was a different man. He began to write again, but his tone had shifted from arrogance to humility. His most famous work from this period is titled The Incoherence of the Philosophers. In it, he didn't try to destroy philosophy, but he did try to show its limits. He argued that human reason is a powerful tool for mathematics and logic, but it is often out of its depth when it tries to explain the ultimate nature of existence or the divine. He compared the philosophers of his day to people who had become so obsessed with the tools of their trade that they forgot what they were trying to build. He showed that many of the things we think we know through reason are actually just assumptions we have made because we have seen them happen many times before. He was pointing out the flaws in our mental software centuries before modern psychology began to explore the same ideas. Al-Ghazali eventually returned to teaching, but only on his own terms. He lived a quiet life back in his hometown of Tus, focusing on the integration of law, ethics, and spirituality. He believed that knowledge is actually dangerous if it is not paired with moral growth. If you become more learned but not more humble, he argued, you are moving in the wrong direction. He died in 1111, leaving behind a legacy that reshaped the intellectual landscape of the world. He is remembered not as someone who had all the answers, but as someone who had the courage to admit when he was lost. He showed that doubt is not the enemy of faith or knowledge. It is often the very thing that allows them to become sincere. So, what can we take away from a Persian scholar who lived nearly 1,000 years ago? Perhaps it is the reminder that our public success and our private truth are not always the same thing. We live in an age where we are constantly encouraged to perform, to be experts, and to project certainty. But Al-Ghazali's life suggests that the most important work we do is often the work that happens when the cameras are off and the audience is gone. He proved that it is possible to survive a total collapse of your worldview and come out the other side with something more resilient. He didn't find certainty by ignoring his doubts, but by walking straight through them. But I want to know what you think. Have you ever reached a point where you felt like a fraud in your own life? Have you ever had to walk away from something successful because it didn't feel true anymore? It is a difficult, often lonely path to take, and I am interested to hear your stories in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful, consider subscribing to the channel. I have been working on more consistent updates, and your support really helps us keep telling these stories. I will see you in the next video.